I would like to introduce one of my oldest and enduring friendships. Someone who is the epitome of Diva Jane, has dealt with life's up and downs, and through it all is the amazing, fulfilled woman you see today. Karen, thank you so much for joining us on Diva Jane and becoming our first becoming interview. How are you
Yay.
feeling today?
Great. I'm excited.
Yeah? Any nerves? I'm nervous.
A little, not too bad. We'll see. We'll see how it progresses.
So, Karen, tell us who you are today. We're looking at this fabulous, exuberant woman. Tell us who Karen is.
Well, today Karen is a retired teacher
Whoop,
who,
whoop.
yes, who is enjoying life on the other side as it was meant to be. Enjoying my wonderful husband, our who is also retired, our wonderful life together, our grandkids, just the whole package. I couldn't ask for anything more. I am extremely blessed.
And so you can say at the time that we're doing this interview that life is good.
It's fabulous. Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome stuff. Obviously, I know a lot about you, but our viewers don't. And seeing you now, this beautiful, vivacious, intelligent woman talking to me today, they have no clue about your unique journey. And hopefully they're going to be inspired by seeing that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes,
So,
there.
Karen, are you ready to just kind of dive right in there and tell us what growing up Karen was like?
I'm ready if you are.
Okay, everybody, you're
Hang
not going to
on.
believe this story. All right, Karen was born up. No, it's going to go for the poor country child in
Yeah.
rural, wherever. Anyway, bad joke. Anyway, Karen, lead us off.
So I was born in 1969. I'm 57 years old. I was born with a port wine stain on my left side of my face, covers half of my face. It's bright red. So that was a challenge to begin with. Growing up with that, I'm not going to call it an affliction. It was just a bump in the road. It was people asked a lot of questions. There were stares. Nobody really knew what was going on. Just typical things that people how they react to something that's different. And
When
and
did you first realize that you had something that might be different than what
I
everybody else has?
I guess I always knew. I don't even remember when there was a time where I said, "Oh wow, what is this?" I guess I always knew. And when I was younger, we moved a few times with my dad's job, so I had to go over this process again and again in different school settings, different with different people, different neighbors, such as that. But finally, when I was 7, we moved to Husser, Louisiana, and I started going to school at Laranger when I was in 2nd grade, which is when you and I met. I was a very scared child going into another new environment, didn't know
Yeah.
how I would be accepted. And this nice little girl gave me her swing, and here we are 50 years later,
Yes,
still
I
still
will say that
growing.
was obviously a defining moment in my life too. And what our viewers don't know is there were like two swings. So when the recess
Yes,
bell hit, you hauled
you
it.
ran.
You hauled it to make sure you got a swing. And I look over there and I see this new girl looking all shy. And just for our viewers, I thought that, little kid perception, I thought that she had eaten a popsicle and gotten some of the popsicle juice on her face. And that's why she had that. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll give up my swing. Best decision ever, obviously, because here we are all these years later.
But living in a small town, I think, made it easier because once I didn't see new people all the time, so I didn't have to
Okay.
repeat the story over and over again. Once we finally
Okay.
moved and got settled in there, and I had very few bullying experiences. There were a couple, but nothing major. It was a much more comfortable setting for
And I don't
someone like
remember it
that.
being a big deal in school. Like, I don't obviously don't know it from your perspective, but like you said, once you were there, it was like, okay, new girl, seen it, done it. Now,
Right,
Karen, and you had a really good friend group.
I
So
did.
it
I had
didn't
a
seem
very
to
strong friend group.
hold you back at all.
Yes, no, it did not. But along the way, the challenge there, I guess, was my home life. Once we moved to Huster, things were very different. My dad was a chemistry professor at Southeastern eventually, but he had been a chemist working in the field for a while, and he lost his job, got fired, and got scared. And this is why we moved to Huster. He was going to dairy.
I don't think
Um,
I realized that.
mhm.
I didn't realize he got
Imagine,
fired.
imagine he got fired because he couldn't get along with people. Can you believe?
Well, don't get ahead of our story, Karen. But on the outside, looking in, you had a perfect family.
Yes, it
just
does.
as it was designed to be, right?
That's right. That's right. That's what everybody thought. We were in church every Sunday. He was a deacon in the church, Sunday school director. I not at 7 years old, but as I got older, I taught Sunday school there. I played the piano at church. We were a very Christian loving family, supposedly. So anyway, time progressed. He dairying became something that he wasn't completely interested in. He finally got a job at Southeastern teaching chemistry. My mom taught at Loranger High School. She taught physics and chemistry and math. And so my brother and I did a lot of the milking there, and it was a very, I'm going to say in quotes, healthy upbringing because it taught you a lot of responsibility. We are both extremely responsible people now. We don't have any problems being somewhere on time, sticking with the situation. We don't jump jobs. We're pretty grounded. But my dad was not the nicest man behind closed doors.
So one of the things, Karen, I mentioned that you on the surface, it looked like you guys had the perfect family, but because you and I were friends, I knew a lot of what was going on,
Mhm,
behind the scenes. And I know that your dad, while a chemistry professor, he had his own demons, that he was battling with his self-worth and different things like that. And unfortunately, it came out in ways that maybe were harmful,
mhm.
to you. But I guess I don't want to say harmful because at the end of the day, everything that builds you and everything, you go through makes you stronger, makes you who you are. Your mom was a staple there,
Mhm.
right? In the household, and she was always there, kind of a quasi protector, but she could only do so much as well.
Right.
Right.
Yes, she did not have a dominant personality. So she kind of took the role of just trying to be the peacemaker rather than trying to step in and be the protector. I guess in her way, that was her way of protecting us. My brother's kind of the same way she is. I was always the loudmouth. I was always the one that incited issues with my father, I guess, because I did not sit back and keep my mouth shut. I spoke my mind, and in a way, I think he appreciated that, but in a way, it also did not always work to my benefit. But
Put a target on you sometimes.
yeah, yeah, sometimes. But and he was like, as you said, he was battling his own things. He was it's incredible. I really believe that there's that fine line between being a genius and being insane. And I think he was writing that line because I don't know how much you know about this, but he taught himself how to play the violin, the banjo, the guitar. He had an air conditioning service on the side. He taught himself how to do that. He made furniture. He taught himself how to build furniture. He spoke Russian and German, taught himself how to speak that. He was a chemist, but yet he went back and took accounting classes and became a certified CPA. He was just a really amazing
He was
person.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, as far as his accomplishments were concerned, but it was never enough. It was never enough for him. It was never enough for my grandparents had a lot to do with who he became. My grandfather was not always the nicest man to my dad. He expected him to do a lot more than he did, and I think trying to fill those shoes was always very difficult for my father.
Mhm.
But anyway, so yes, we had some difficult times growing up. He was very verbally abusive. That was the main thing. There was with me, there really wasn't any physical abuse, I don't think, but nothing that I would perceive as physical. I'll get into that later and see what other people perceive it as. But to me, it was just not really that way. But verbally, yes, get off your fat ass and turn the television. It's that kind of stuff.
That's right. You were the remote control.
We were the remote
The
control,
kids
and if
were, and yeah, I remember that now.
yes, and and that was always a big thing, my weight. He pushed that button because he knew that that was a sore spot for me. So he used that a lot to his advantage. But at my house, if you were sick, then you needed to be in bed. Besides that, you should be up working, doing something. There was no lounging around. There was no lazy Sunday, Saturday mornings. We were always busy. There was always something to do, and you needed to find something to do. And we did basically we tried to find stuff to do that was away from the house just so that we didn't have to be around him. When I say away from the house, it's still on the property. He would freak out if we left. He always wanted us at home. Never wanted us to go anywhere else. But we would try to find things to do to stay out of his line of sight, to stay out of his mouth. I guess his verbal
Criticisms.
criticisms. Yes, thank you. So, we were out, like I said, out and about a lot on the farm doing things, just trying to stay away from that as much as possible. Good
So
question.
one of the things that I remembered about, just being friends with you, obviously I had the polar opposite situation where, and I'm not going to get into that so deeply, just know that Karen and I are sisters in dysfunctional family in totally opposite ways. So while Karen had her environment was more controlled and more, it was all about being safe. It was about being home. It was about always, your dad always knowing where you were. Whereas, I could do anything and, was the person with no curfews and things like that.
You're right about the looks of our families. Like I had the mom and the dad that were at home all the time. They were together, they were married, they had good jobs. We were a very Christian family. We had a beautiful home. They were very successful. We never went without. There was never a fear of not having anything materialistically or as far as having any of our needs. We never worried about having our needs unmet or not met. We were always very well taken care of on the outside. On the inside, it was a different story because our insides were just in an upheaval. I liked to sleep late, and that was not something that would
Mm.
fly at my house. And before I got a little older and started milking cows, and I could sleep a little bit later, the way that my dad would wake us up, because we didn't want to get out of bed, was he would bring a water bottle in the room and spray us and make us wake up that way. And so, that was just an example of some of the decisions that he made
The
that
psychological.
showed that yes, that there was something there that was not right. When I was in high school, you and I both were on the dance team. We went to football games on Friday nights. We did our thing on the field. I think my dad came to one game every year. That was it. That was pretty much his staple. He hated that we went. He hated that we did this. My mom was the cheerleader sponsor. He hated that too, even though she really didn't have a choice. It came along with her job, but he
So
hated
she
that
probably, in some ways,
and
it
liked
was a
being away.
relief. She probably
Yes.
never asked to get away from it.
Right, right. But as soon as the night was over, as soon as the game was over, or we got back from the game, there was no going to Sicily's Pizza with my friends and
Yeah,
hanging
we used to
out.
go after every game and
There
into
was none.
town and get pizza and go out and whatever. Yep.
And I went home. And that was all the way through high school, even as a senior. My dad was not happy with the decisions that I made in high school. I dated some people that he did not appreciate. I'm not trying to brag at all, but on
Your
on
best friend he
my
did not
friends,
appreciate.
yeah, right. But when we graduated on graduation night, I mean, I got so many awards. I had no idea I was getting all of these things, but I did. But that didn't matter. I hugged a lady that night because she was congratulating me, and my dad saw that, and he was furious, and that was it.
That was all he saw
It
in
was
the
all he
night.
saw the whole night.
How
The whole
you let the family down
Yes, yes, that
because
was
you
it.
showed less than perfection.
Yes, that was it. So none of that was good
Wow.
enough. Yeah,
And I
and
remember us, everybody going out and that night, and you had a family party and you had to go home
yes,
to
and right,
celebrate.
yeah, with my grandparents.
Yes.
That was the family party. The grandparents that live down the road that I see that every day. You know, yeah,
Oh,
it was that control thing, and I think really and truly, I think he was scared for my safety, which is going to sound really strange later on after what actually happened, because talk about the most unsafe thing in the world, but that was how he was. You never went anywhere without putting your seatbelt on. You never went to bed without making sure the doors were locked. Even in the country, you could run around outside naked and nobody could see us at our house where we live so far back.
I
But you
remember
lock those doors.
they would go somewhere if they had to be so leave early in the morning, you guys had to get up.
We had to be
Even
up.
if it
That's
was like
right.
5 o'clock in the morning, because what if the house burned down?
That's right. We had to be
Right. I
awake
remember.
and alert. Before he was hired at Southeastern, he got a job at Ormet Chemical Company in Gonzales. And so, because the drive was so long from Husser to Gonzales, he actually rented a trailer over there. Best years of our life. But we would go on Wednesday nights. We would go and spend the night with him at his trailer every week, and then we'd come back and go to school the next morning. So when he was not at home, I think he made my mom feel so um not guilty, but just it was like this was her responsibility completely to make sure that we were completely safe, that there was nothing that ever happened to us. We were her soul. That's all she should be worried about while he's gone. So at night, when it got time to go to bed, she would have us sleep in her room with her. I would sleep in the bed and Mark would sleep on a pallet on the floor. She would lock the bedroom door. She would put a chair in front of, underneath the lock, underneath the door
Wow.
handle to keep it, if it was in case somebody came in, and she had a gun on the side of the bed.
Holy moly.
And
Were
I
you
think,
in your house in Husser at that point?
uh-huh,
It had been
yeah,
built?
yeah.
So
If
your
we were
dad
out there in the middle of nowhere,
was
you
your
know?
mom, do you think your mom was, because I know your mom to be very methodical and, very structured and very, careful in her approach, but I didn't know if some of that comes from your dad's,
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
in her head.
I think he instilled upon her, these kids are your responsibility when I'm not here. And if anything happens to them, this is your fault. There was no, there is no team player in the Hughes family. It's everybody out for themselves. So you can't, and I find myself doing that sometimes. Like you don't, it's something like you don't want to make a decision on something because if the decision's wrong, then you're going to get blamed for it. Because
Oh, okay.
there wasn't a that's okay. It's okay that happened. This is your fault. You did this is your fault.
Okay. So there was
So
definitely a cost, a penalty, if you
yes,
will, if you messed up and things didn't go
correct.
because you weren't doing what you needed to do.
And it's taken me a long time to get out. I mean, even like simple stuff. My husband now will say, where do you want to go for dinner? And I'll say, oh, I don't care. What do you want to do? Wherever you want to go is fine because I don't want to make that decision. Because what if the food's bad? Then it's my decision. I made the
Okay,
decision.
that's interesting. Okay.
Yes. So even today, that still is something that I fight is just kind of not wanting to be the one to make the decision. But
Okay.
um, but anyway, so yeah, so that was part of I think his influence of this is all on you. If something happens to these kids and I'm not here, and so I think that was her way of securing the fact that okay, nothing's going to happen until I'm on my watch. I'm going to make sure that I keep them as safe as I can as can be. So,
Okay. So we've gotten to the point where um, we see that your dad was the driving force in your childhood, right? He
mhm,
he pretty much set the tone for all the experiences, where you lived, how you lived, what you
mhm.
ate, where you where you went, the
Everything.
whole spiel. He wanted to be in control of your friends and your
Mhm.
relationships, but Karen with the rebellious streak, um,
Yes.
and that was probably your salvation,
Hmm.
right? Not
Yeah.
being kowtowed into and molded into less than who you are.
Hmm. As I got older, I got a mouth on me that spoke for not only me, but sometimes I spoke for my brother. Sometimes I spoke for my mom. I mean, because I, I just seemed to be the one that was the more outspoken of the three of us, which, as I said, is a good thing and a bad thing because it sometimes push some buttons. I can remember making my dad so mad that I would run in the house and go in the bathroom and lock the door because I was so scared. And sometimes he would come back there and want to get in and I wouldn't let him in. I mean, because I was afraid of what would happen. Again, never really physical, just the verbal beating, that you would receive from or punishment. I would get punished for something and there was no end. It was an endless punishment. Like,
Right.
okay, you can't go anywhere. And I would say, okay, so tell me again where I'm supposed to go because I don't go anywhere now. Does that mean I don't go to the bathroom by myself anymore? Because that's about the only time I have by myself. It was that kind of thing where,
Mhm.
because and it didn't have an end to it. The punishments, it was never, okay, you're grounded for 2 weeks. It was, you can't do this. You can't do this forever. There was, like I said, there was just no end to it. And that was a big thing I made sure of when I was raising my daughter was that the punishment fit the crime and the punishment had an end. There was a clear time frame of when that would be over with.
So we've gotten to this point. I keep thinking of this one thing, and I don't know what you said or what you did, but at some point, Karen finally got a car. How did you get a car? How did you get the freedom enough to get a car?
Yeah, so I graduated and I got some money for graduation. So we went on halves. I paid half of the car, and my parents paid the other half for a graduation present. And
Okay.
then I paid half of my insurance. After I got my car, I was a road runner. I was excited. I had this car and I wanted to go here and there. And well, my dad, I was still living at home, and he thought that I was going too much. Well, so he chained my car to a tree.
That's my
He went,
memory. Yep.
yes, he went and got a huge chain and a lock, and then chained it to a tree. So he went to my grandparents' house, which was very common. He would go down there a lot. And I went and got some bolt cutters and I cut the lock and I ran away to Tammy's house in Laranger. He was ticked. And I don't know if you remember, but he would stop by your dad's house on the way to Southeastern in the mornings, and he would leave parts of
Stuff.
things, yeah, by your front door. You remember
Yeah.
that? Yeah, like a speaker from my stereo system. One time he left the speaker there. Like it served, there was absolutely no purpose except that he was just trying to send me a message. It was supposed to be intimidating. So
Yes.
what am I going to do with this one speaker? Absolutely nothing.
Control. Well, he was kicking you out, girl, if you didn't get it
Yeah.
together. He was gonna put
Yes.
all your stuff on my porch. Little did
Right.
he know you'd get freedom like nobody's business.
Right. Exactly. So, and I don't even remember, I don't know how things got better, but I did go back home.
I don't
I don't
either.
remember the road to the
It
resolution there,
wasn't
but
that long.
no, it wasn't. It was a
It
few
was probably your
days,
mom, if I had to guess.
probably. So, so that was another thing too, was that, my dad and I were both at Southeastern together, and he felt that we should ride together to say, yeah, exactly. I did have to ride with him some, but I usually was able to drive my car, which was nice. And that was when my freedom started to happen. I got a job at the print shop at Southeastern, so I was working there a lot. I was in school a lot. That was like my salvation, for sure. It got
No, I
me.
mean, you finally got to experience the fun of going out and hanging out
Mhm.
and not having somebody looking over your shoulder. And you did
Right.
get a little wild, girl.
I did. My curfew was midnight to come back home. I was 19 years old, 20 years old, with a curfew of midnight. People in Hammond went out about what, 10 or so? So 11:15, I'm supposed to be shutting it down and heading back home. And I did for a while, but then I started exceeding that.
Pushing the
And
envelope. Yes.
yeah, and then there were a couple of times where I came home from Hammond and went straight to the dairy barn because it was 4 o'clock in the morning and time to milk cows. Because I just got to where I wasn't going to stick with that anymore.
Yeah.
But at that same time was also the time that my parents' marriage was really declining. You could see that my mom was really unhappy and looking for a way out, and the focus maybe wasn't so much on me anymore. I guess maybe it was more on the two of them. I think I was 20 when I moved to Hammond. Finally had a feeling of independence. That was my very first memory of having not complete independence, but somewhat. So anyway, at Southeastern and living in the apartment, like I said, it was a lot of fun. I paid my rent. My parents did not pay it for me, which I appreciate now. I didn't at the time. So then I met Paul, which was my first husband, and we dated for a couple years, and then we got married. Right before we got married, it was Christmas, and we always had the Charlie Brown tree. You had to go cut it out of the woods. We didn't buy one. There was no artificial tree. You had to go cut it down, and what you got was what you got. So Mark and Paul and I decided that we were going to go and find us a tree and bring it to the house. And it was like 2 weeks before Christmas. I mean, it wasn't, my dad said, no, it's too early. We're not doing it. Well, we
Oh,
did it anyway. Yeah. Well, we did it anyway. And so we were bringing it in the house and setting it up. And he came in and showed us behind, and, y'all are not putting this up now. This is not. And I don't know. I can't remember what happened, but the next thing I know, he and Mark are in a physical altercation over it. And I jumped in and I bit my dad in the stomach to let go of my brother. That's when my mama finally said, enough is enough. And she started planning her absence. I guess we'll call it her departure. So she talked to us about it, Mark and me both. Of course, we've been wanting it for years. I kept telling, ever since, I feel like ever since I could talk, I was telling her she should have been, she should have left him. Everybody did. Even his own sister was telling her, this is not good for you. You should get out of this. So she decided that now that apparently, and what we found out later was she was sticking to it for the kids. That was her reason for staying behind, which is a
How
good
old was Mark when this happened? He was like what, in high school, 10th grade-ish?
15. Yeah, 15, like ninth grade, 10th grade, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my mom and I went to found an apartment for her in Hammond. Of course, my dad knows nothing of this. This is all behind his back. And I don't even know if you know this, but when I would go to visit, Mama would send stuff back with me, little things at a time, like a few plates, a few cups, just enough to that she and Mark would have something at the apartment, but Elvin would not realize that stuff was missing from the house. And so I was kind of her mule, I guess, in a sense, but hauling all of her stuff for her. But anyway, so I think it was in January. Daddy got up, went to my grandparents' house like he always did to have coffee, and Mama and Mark left. Mama left him a note, and he was furious. Called me right away, wanted to know what I knew about it.
So he called
Um,
you and you answered. Did you know your mom had
yes,
left that morning?
I knew that that was in the plan, but I was in Baton Rouge at Paul's house. So he called Paul's house. He was furious with me, wanting to know if I knew where they were, if I knew if I had had any knowledge of this, and why didn't I tell him, and da 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 da, and all this kind of stuff. And it was just, it was, you know. So this is when he really went off the deep end. He somehow or another found out where she was living, unbeknownst to us, any of us. He would get into her apartment while she wasn't there, look around at things. And the way he did that was Mark was going back and forth. He was saying some with Mama and Hammond and some at the house in Hustler because he was still milking cows. And so all we can figure is that when Mark was sleeping, Daddy took the keys and went and had a key made somewhere, and then went got Mark's keys and then had the apartment key, Mama's apartment key made, and made himself a copy because he wasn't breaking in. He was opening the door, getting in.
Mm.
He was stalking her. He would tell her what she had on a certain day, a certain place where she was. He would say, I saw
Did
you
you
today.
know all this was going on at the time?
I did
Not
not.
until after.
Right. I did not know all this was happening. I knew that things were rocky, and I knew that because he made that very clear to all of us that he was not in a good place. Even his job suffered, at Southeastern. Some of the people that he was teaching in this particular time, I knew some of them, and they would talk about how he would come to class just a mess, and he would start crying in class.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, it was just, he would ask me if I lay down in this driveway, would you run over my head? I mean, it
I
was
don't
just like,
I almost laughed and guys, you just have to know that for some reason her dad always impacted me in the strangest way. And I had the
me too.
laughter. Karen will tell you.
That was her
I don't
stressor. Her stress relief was.
Was it? I don't know.
I
I
don't
was like,
know.
I would laugh uncontrollably when he would just walk in a room and Karen's like, Tammy, quit
Stop it.
laughing.
You're
And I'm like,
antagonizing.
yeah. And I'm like, it was like I was in church. I couldn't church laugh. I couldn't stop laughing. So anyway, that's wasn't laughing at Karen running over his head. It was just he had this amazing it was cartoonish, like
Mm-hmm.
over the top
Mm-hmm.
things. Everything
It's
was
hard to
just
explain. It really is.
aggrandized.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you. I'll just go with it's hard to explain. One of the questions that I had when you were talking about how your mom had to kind of plan strategically how she was going to leave this relationship, right? She made the
Mm-hmm.
plan, she got the apartment, she had you smuggle stuff out. What do you think that what was she scared of? Like, why didn't she just want to say, you know what, I've had it, I'm taking my stuff and I'm leaving?
I think that she was scared for us. I don't think she ever feared for herself. I think she feared that he would do something to us to spite her, to try to
Um,
get back at her.
all right. So your mom has left. Your
Yes.
dad is stalking her. She's still working in LaRondre as a school teacher. She's
Mm-hmm.
living in her apartment. And at that time, you're planning a wedding, right?
Yes. Right. So this is in January, and Paul and I are getting married in June. And so, on top of all of this other stuff, yes, we're trying to plan a wedding. And I think my mom just kind of just dove into the wedding plans as an escape almost to try to get away from. Because I told Morgan when I was helping my daughter Morgan when I was helping plan her wedding, I said I don't remember me doing any. Morgan planned a lot of her own wedding, and I said I don't remember me doing anything when I got married. I think my mama did
Oh,
it all, and I think that was her way of just kind of, like I said, not focusing on what was going on around her.
right.
So we were trying to plan the wedding. So, this persisted, this stalking, this stalking her, and then just questioning. We used to call him the question king because he would call, what do you think? What do you think? You think your mom and I are gonna get back together? What do you think? What do you think? I mean, he would do that with everybody. Anybody that he talked to. You think Diane and I are gonna get back together? It depends on who he's talking to. What do you think? What do you think? And so we would call him the what do you think man, because it was always, what do you think's gonna happen? What do you think's gonna happen? And so they went through counseling during this time. And there was a particular counseling session where mama had decided that she was going to just say there, she didn't feel like anything was going to work and that they were going to have to divorce. Well, Paul, this is before we were married, but Paul got very nervous about that. He was very concerned for my mom's safety when that happened. And so he didn't know how my dad was going to react to that. So they were seeing a counselor in Ochsner's in New Orleans. And so Paul and I drove to Ochsner's in New Orleans. We hid in the parking lot. I'm pretty sure Paul had a gun with him,
Oh,
just in
wow.
case. Yeah. And we watched to make sure Mama got out of the building and into her car safely. And what my dad didn't know was that the counselor was keeping him back for a couple of minutes, just saying that she needed to talk to him so that my mom could get to her car,
Okay. So your mom had basically been talking to the counselor and planning how to
say
make this
this.
happen successfully
Yes,
or
yes,
safely.
right. So even that session wasn't enough. He still had this idea that they were going to get back together. Mama left. She got in her car safely, and she went and met my grandparents, her parents, at in Mississippi on the coast somewhere,
Okay.
and stayed with them for the weekend. And they so they because they were he was even calling my grandparents. He showed up at their house a couple of times, wanting to know where my mama was, and they had to basically say you have to get off our property. You can't be here. And it was not a pleasant situation for anyone. So after that, wedding plans, wedding plans, wedding plans. So
And
yes,
just to set the tone again, at this point, your dad has, unbeknownst to you, copied your brother's key, going in and out of your mom's house, stalking her, asking everybody about her. But he's also been dating someone,
yes, he has. Um,
which
somebody
is
from
interesting.
Husser. Yeah, it's just because he couldn't be alone. He had a. Not only did he date somebody, but he got an apartment in Baton Rouge so that he could stay in Baton Rouge sometimes, and because he thought that would be fun, he would have the fun life. And then he kept the house in Husser as well. So, but yes, so the wedding plans came along, and I thought it was a beautiful day. Everything was great. We had the rehearsal. Everything was fine at the rehearsal. We had a good time. Wedding day was fun, hot as Hades, but it was fun. And in June. And then after the wedding, we had a lot of the beer left in the keg. So we took it back to Dawn's apartment for all of us to hang out and visit and drink beer and all that kind of stuff that evening.
And
And
your brother
and
came with us.
yes, Mark came with us, which I was surprised. Now, also during this time, my brother has decided that he is going to join the National Guard. And the day after my wedding, he was leaving to go to South Carolina for basic training. So we were kind of celebrating that as well. We were excited for him, new start, and whatever. Well, while we were there, my mom calls in a panic, apparently, and gets my brother on the phone.
And then he had to leave.
Right.
We didn't
He
know
left
any of the other particulars at that
the
time.
details. Right.
So
Yes.
I don't know if you were clued in at that point. I think we were all just partying, right?
Yes.
Because the next day you were leaving to go on your honeymoon, right?
Right, right. And so we did. We went to Disney for gone for a week. Then when we got back, my mama sat me down and basically told me about all the drama that had happened that we didn't know about. So apparently, even before that, my dad asked me why there were sheriff deputies at our wedding. And I said,
Oh,
well, I assumed it came with Blythewood. We got married at this plantation, and I assumed they were there directing traffic, or whatever. And he said, well, have they ever been there for another wedding? And I said, I don't know. I didn't think anything about it. Well, apparently, my mom had asked for extra, or somebody did, asked for extra sheriff's deputies that were there, not only in uniform, but there were also some plainclothes ones that I
oh
didn't know
wow.
about. The day before, there had been a bomb threat. Somebody called with a bomb threat for that Sunday for the wedding, which I didn't know about that either. And so they did a sweep
Was
of
that
the
your dad?
house. Don't know. Still don't know
So
to
you
this
never
day.
found out what the story
Mm-mm.
was, but it was supposed to happen during your wedding?
Mhm. Somebody had told my uncle, my dad's brother, don't leave him alone at all today. Even if he goes to the bathroom, you go in there with him. We don't want him by himself at all. They told my mom to make sure she was holding his right hand when they were coming down the aisle, sitting at
Why
the,
is that?
because he's right-handed, and they
Oh, in
were,
case he was going to do something.
mhm. um, he and I rode around from the back of the plantation to the front where I was going to walk down the little bricked walkway. We got out of the car, and there were sheriff's deputies there. And again, I didn't think about anything. And so
God, I
one
don't
of
even
them,
remember that. That's so funny. Like
well, one of them looked at my dad and said, "You've got something on your shoulders," and they went all the way down.
he was patted down. So
Didn't even know.
why did your mom at that point ask for security?
I don't remember. I don't know if it was because of
Okay.
the bomb threat. I don't know if this all stemmed from that they assumed that he was the one that had done it, and that if he had
Hmm.
made that kind of threat, that he could have done something else. I don't really know. I
Okay.
know that a neighbor of ours was who worked for the police department. I know he was significant in making all of this happen. After the wedding was over, we'd all left. Mama stayed behind, was cleaning up, picking up, whatever. And he was there too, hounding her. And, are we gonna get back together? Are we getting back together? Mama was trying to leave in her vehicle. He was chasing her down the driveway of the plantation where we got married,
Was it
trying
running or with the car?
running, yeah. So that's when she kind of freaked out, I think, and got Mark, and then they left. And I don't know where they went that night. I know Mark left the next day to go to South Carolina for basic training, but I'm not sure where they actually went that night. Wait,
And that's when your mom was hiding out for a couple of weeks with
then
friends,
she went to
right?
right. She went to the friend's house after that. Yes. And so then, and I learned about all this by phone. She was telling me this on the telephone because I didn't know
But
any of
this
this had
after you got
happened.
back from your honeymoon, right?
Yes,
Because
right.
being the classic mom, she didn't want to
Yes.
interrupt your
Your
experience.
honeymoon. That's right.
And I may not have said this because I don't know that we've talked enough about your mom. What a stable, fabulous woman, she
Yes.
was.
Yes.
She too was dealing with her own psychological demons from Elvin,
Yes.
but your mom was just a rock solid lady.
Yes. And I often asked her why Elvin, but my mama was extremely smart. My dad's intelligence attracted my mom to him. And I think he was really good looking too, actually. They say he was, so I don't know. But
No, I can see that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
He had some eyes that beautiful eyes, but they as he
mhm,
got a little crazier,
got crazier.
they show, it showed through his eyes.
Mhm. We got married in June. The summer went by. I was doing my student teaching in August at an elementary school in Livingston Parish. And that was going to be my last semester of college. I'd graduate after that. Mama came back home and got back into her routine. Elvin was still, badgering, but I don't think it was anything that we were really frightened of. Mark was at
But
basic training.
let me say one thing. He's still dating the other woman. We didn't
We're
really go
dating
down
another
that
one.
path.
Yep.
Okay.
So Mark finished at basic training. Here's where the two vehicles come in. We had two different vehicles. We had a van and we had a car. My mom and Cindy, who was the mom of the other boy that Mark was with at basic training, they took the van. They traded vehicles with my dad. My mama took the van to South Carolina because Mark and his friend were going to have a lot of baggage and things to
Mm.
bring back and all that. So they went to South Carolina. They did a little vacation time together, which was kind of fun. I think they enjoyed that. And then they went and picked the boys up and brought them back. In the meantime, I am at work at the print shop, and Dawn and I are planning a welcome back party for my brother from coming back from basic training. The day that they got back, it was late. The next morning, I was talking to my mom, and she was saying that she was going to go out to Husser and exchange vehicles with my dad and bring my brother out there so that um, my dad could see him. And since he'd been gone for so long. And I said, Mama, why don't you let me take the van out there? Why don't you let me do the vehicle exchange? Since things have been kind of weird with y'all. And she said, no, no, it's fine. So I said, okay. So she goes out there. Again, I'm at work. I've got my cousin with me for the day. I don't know why. She was with me at work. I get a phone call from my other cousin, and she is hysterical on the phone. She's at my grandparents' house, and she's crying and telling me that I need to come there, that something's happened. And so my grandfather took the phone and said, I don't know what's going on out there. I think he shot her, and I think he's laying out there dead himself.